As you undoubtedly have heard, there was another killing just 2 weeks after the prior one by ICE agents of an American citizen in Minneapolis yesterday morning. ICE agents shot and killed a 37-year-old ICU nurse who worked at Veterans Affairs named Alex Preddy. And there has been all sorts of debate and analysis of various angles of videos, as happened 2 weeks earlier with the ICE killing of Renee Good, also 37-year-old, also like Alex Preddy with no criminal record, to determine whether or not ICE was justified or not in this killing. I don't want this video to focus on that. I will, though, give you my view of that. I don't want to focus on that simply because there's so many people analyzing and breaking down these videos and giving their views. I don't even actually think this is a very difficult issue, the question of whether or not this shooting was justified. He clearly was no danger to any of those ICE agents. He was not acting in an aggressive way toward them when he approached them. He had a camera in his hand at the time that they shot him. He was clearly under control. He had just been sprayed with massive amounts of pepper sprayed, and the weapon that he was carrying, which was a legally carried weapon, he had a permit for it, was taken away from him by ICE agents. At no point did he ever attempt to pull the gun on them or aim it at them or shoot them, contrary to huge numbers of people who claimed that he pulled out the gun and aimed it at them online. I want to focus instead on the fact that the government and various government officials, top-level Trump administration officials, just continue to blatantly lie about these incidents. And I say that because if you want to debate whether these killings are justified, obviously people could debate the role of ICE and mass deportations. I thought that it was a pretty strong ethos in right-wing politics that we don't want federal armed agents patrolling American streets. This has been a part of right-wing ideology for as long as I can remember, and yet now we're sending all sorts of other armed agencies besides ICE apparently to Minneapolis, including alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and all sorts of other armed agencies. Exactly what the right has always said that it opposed. But even if you think ICE was justified, even if you think because of the need to have mass deportations, you don't mind having ICE, which clearly seemed to be filled with all sorts of very untrained, newly hired ideologues, even if you want them being able to act against American citizens with the frequency with which they've been acting, you shouldn't want government officials just blatantly lying to your face about what has happened. And typically, if you're somebody who is confident in the truth of what you're stating, if you believe that the events as they happened show, in fact, that what was done was justified, you don't need to fabricate claims. You don't need to use false incendiary rhetoric. And yet that is exactly what happened almost immediately before even much was known. And yet the administration continues to do it. And I would hope that whatever side of the debate you fall on, you're in favor of mass deportations or you're not, you want ICE agents in the street or you don't, you think the shooting was justified, the killing of Renee Good was justified or you don't. We should all be able to agree that having government officials blatantly lie, look us in the face and actually lie about what took place and be able to know that they lied, because we can all watch these video angles and these various versions of the video ourselves, should be something that leaves us indignant. And yet, for some reason, a lot of people, particularly people who are supporters of the government, don't seem to mind at all. In fact, are happy when government officials lie to their face. So let's first of all take a look at the video. That's obviously necessary in order to understand what happened. I want to show you first the beginning part where you're going to see Alex Preddy, who was in the street filming the ICE agents, which is something that all Americans have the right to do. We all have the right to tape record government officials, armed agents of the state. No doubt about that. You can't be arrested or gunned down for doing that. Earlier this week, there was a video of an ICE agent who threatened a woman who was videotaping them by saying that he had taken down her license plate. She was going to be deemed a domestic terrorist and put in one of their databases for doing nothing other than filming. But filming ICE agents, filming any kind of law enforcement is the absolute right of American citizens. And then he goes over and they approach him and he's holding nothing but a phone in his hand, not a gun or anything else. And at no point does he act violently towards them. He's trying to help a woman who they have pushed down. They all get bear sprayed. Remember, this is an ICU nurse, probably a left-wing activist as well, who went there to observe as opposed to what ICE is doing. No doubt about that. We don't gun down people on the street for protesting or for having a certain ideology. At least we're not supposed to. So here is the first part of what happened here. Just I want to show the videos just so everybody can judge for themselves and then listen to what government officials said about them.
Go.
All right, there you see him in the middle of the street. He's filming the ICE agents as they walk. He's then holding traffic so that he can get across and keep filming them.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
And then they push a woman and he goes to help her. And then they bear spray him or pepper spray him. And that's how this melee began. He didn't approach any ICE agents violently or with pulling a gun. All right, so there you see the fatal scene. So there's no question.
What the fuck?
And I should warn you, some of these videos are actually quite graphic. Some of them are more up close. You're going to see a fellow citizen, an American citizen, posing no threat to ICE agents, being shot in the back and then having multiple bullets emptied into him and killing him on the spot. But there's no question in that video that the way in which contact was made between ICE agents and Alex Preddy was not that, contrary to many statements made by the government. He went over to them and pointed a gun at them or tried to murder them. He was filming them. And when they pushed a woman into the snow quite aggressively, he went to help her. And that was when they began to pepper spray them or bear spray them. And that's what led to ICE agents then pulling them apart and ultimately to his fatal shooting. Now, here is another angle of the video that shows you a little bit more up close exactly what happened. And at the same time, it contains the statements of Christian Nome. I believe that's what this is. So he is laying on the floor at this point, and you have at least 6 ICE agents standing over them. And at one point, and we're going to show you a separate video, one of the ICE agents actually takes out his gun from the holster. He doesn't take out his gun. The ICE agent disarms him, takes out the gun from where he was carrying it. And again, he had a permit to it. And you see this ICE agent here, the one that has his hand on his gun in his holster, will take out his gun, even though Alex Preddy is now on the ground, surrounded by 4 or 5 different ICE agents, and empty his gun into his back. And it turns out at least 10 bullets were shot and put into his body. And I'm sure that once those first bullets were shot, especially with all the agents at close range, many of them thought there was some kind of shootout of some kind. And that's why they reacted the way they did. The question is, the first ICE agent who took his gun out and shot into the back of Alex Preddy. Now, that gives you a little bit of a better sense. And here is Kristi Noem, the director of Homeland Security, gave a press conference and made statements to justify not only the ICE killing, but made statements basically labeling Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist, claiming he had gone with the intent to massacre as many federal agents as he could, just like they said about Renee Good 2 weeks ago, that she was a domestic terrorist with the intent to do harm to as many ICE agents as she could. These are people with no criminal record, 37 years old, lived their whole lives working as members of their community. And then the government claims, oh, they just woke up one day and decided to go massacre as many ICE agents as they could, even though you clearly see here that wasn't his intent at all. He didn't pull his gun out. He never put his hand on his gun. He never tried to kill any of them. Again, in the melee, you can argue, oh, somehow these federal agents, even though they were wrong, reasonably thought they were endangered. That's a separate argument what I want you to focus on, which is the fact that Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance and so many others outright lied about what happened here. Here is a video contrasting what Kristi Noem said with the events that you can watch as she describes them.
Millimeter semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead.
All right, and here's another one with Kristi Noem.
Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow...
And it goes on a little bit longer here. And again, we just watched that he didn't go up to them violently. He didn't go up to them with a gun or with any attempt to hit them. In fact, the first altercation physically between them was when the ICE agent sprayed him in the face while he was trying to help a woman who they had pushed on the ground. And again, you can say people shouldn't show up at protests with guns, even though a staple of right-wing protests, especially during the COVID era, was showing up not just with pistols hidden, but with huge AR-15s displayed. They entered the Michigan state capitol twice to protest lockdowns. They confronted security and other Capitol Police who were there. Nobody gunned them down on the grounds that, oh, if you take a gun to a protest, it means that somehow you're intending to do violence. That was something Kristi Noem said yesterday as well in her press conference, which was people who want to protest take signs. They don't take guns. Even though right-wing protests across America have very flamboyantly displayed guns for a very long time. So here's what her claim is in a little bit more of an elaborated form.
Officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
Again, whatever your views are on ICE deportations and what happened here, is there anybody who even remotely believes that's what happened, that he showed up to inflict, basically to go massacre law enforcement? And it's particularly bizarre to watch conservatives who have long heralded the Second Amendment as one of our most cherished rights, basically saying that if you're carrying a gun, even if you don't brandish it, even if you don't pull it out, even if you don't try and use it, it's just the presence of the gun itself, even though you're legally carrying it, somehow means that you are so suspect, so likely to engage in violence, that it then becomes permissible to shoot you. What happens to the Second Amendment if that's the new standard? And a lot of conservative officials were making that argument. Oh, if you have a gun, even if you don't use it, even if you're not pulling it out, even if you're not brandishing it, even if you're not trying to use it, just the fact that you have a gun in the eyes of law enforcement can make you dangerous if you're not complying. What happened to the whole decades-long conservative view that we have the right to carry arms, that it doesn't mean that we're threats to the state? Though one of the main reasons to carry arms is to guard against government tyranny and excessive force and violence and authoritarianism by the government. I just want to remind you, by the way, of the capacity of Kristi Noem to lie. And this might seem like a small example in the scheme of what we're discussing, but this is what I want to focus on: government lying and the unflinching and unapologetic way that they continuously do it. And obviously, it's not unique to the Trump administration. I spent many years documenting all sorts of government lies, big and small. But it's still something we always ought to object to because of how dangerous that is. how eroding of trust that is of the population in the government. You need trust and credibility if you're going to put armed agents on the street of the United States. And this is the sort of thing that just destroys it. Being able to watch videos and contrast it with what government officials are telling you and seeing the absolute contrast between the truth and what they're saying. Remember, Kristi Noem wrote a book in 2024 filled with lies, one of which was that she met Kim Jong-un because she was trying to establish herself as this national figure, saying, I've stared down the little dictators around the world. I remember that time I met Kim Jong-un and I sat across the table. And it turns out Kristi Noem never met Kim Jong-un. The whole thing was a complete lie, just a fabrication that was in her book. And she went on Face the Nation, CBS's Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, who asked her about this, and she was incapable of admitting that what she said was false. All she had to do was say, yes, I did say that. I misremembered it. It was put in by somebody else. She just couldn't. Watch what happens here. This is a pathological liar, somebody who just lies without having it even bother them, without even being an out of the ordinary experience.
Some world leaders, and one specific one, quote, I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. I've been a children's pastor after all. Did you meet Kim Jong-un?
Well, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this.
The question was, did you meet Kim Jong-un? Like a very simple question. Like, no, I didn't. And here's why it ended up in the book anyhow. And we're taking it out because we care about. No, she just can't answer it. Listen to this.
This passage, and I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits. So I'm glad that this book is being released in a couple of days and that those edits will be in place and that people will have the updated version.
So you did not meet with Kim Jong-un. That's what you're saying.
Okay, that's a second opportunity to say, yes, that's what I'm saying. I did not meet with Kim Jong-un. And watch what happens instead.
I've met with many, many world leaders.
Imagine just in your everyday life, you say to somebody, hey, you told me that you met with Jack Jones. But I asked Jack Jones and other people, and it turns out you never met with Jack Jones. Did you meet with Jack Jones? And the person just can't say, you know what? No, I didn't. I misremembered. I thought I had. And instead they're like, I met with many, many people in my life. And once this was brought to my attention, we moved forward. And I'm really happy that everyone's going to get to hear what I have to say. I know, but I'm asking you, did you ever meet Jack Jones? You didn't, right? And then the person looks at you and says, in my life, I have met. And they just won't answer. And you obviously you're going to walk away saying this person has an extremely tenuous relationship to the truth, an extreme ease about lying, like no nervousness, just ordinary lying that they've obviously done throughout their life and just do when they wake up. That's what this looks like to me.
Traveled around the world. I think I've talked extensively in this book about my time serving in Congress, my time as governor, before governor, some of the travels that I've had. I'm not going to talk about my specific meetings with world leaders. I'm just not going to do that. This anecdote shouldn't have been in the book, and as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made sure that was adjusted. So.
She's like, I'm not going to talk about my meetings with the world leaders. It's too delicate. It's too sensitive. I operated. This is in 2024 when she was a member of Congress. So I'm not going to talk about my meeting. You're the one who wrote in the book about your meeting with world leaders. The whole reason why it's a discussion is because you said I met with Kim Jong-un and I stared him down and that little bitch ran away with his tail between his legs. That's how tough I am. The whole thing was a complete lie. And then instead of just admitting it, she's like, my meetings with world leaders are extremely sensitive and confidential. So these are the kinds of people we're dealing with. Now, I think what bothered a lot of people, I know what bothered me the most, is that, okay, it's normal for the government to come out and defend ICE agents in a case like this. I think responsible government officials say things like, we're going to wait for the investigation. It seems like they acted in self-defense. They have a very difficult job. There's whatever. That, I think, is all within the realm of what's reasonable. even expected. But they are now instantly, like instinctively and falsely maligning the people, the American citizens who their agents kill, by making up wild stories about them that are so blatantly false. Here is Greg Bavino, who is a senior ICE official. He's in charge of the administration's ICE operations in Minneapolis. Here's what he said in his press conference.
The suspect also had 2 loaded magazines and no accessible ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement.
Same thing that Kristi Noem said. I mean, if he had wanted that, he would have pulled his gun out when he saw a gathering of ICE agents and gone over and just shot as many as he could. It's so blatantly not what he was doing. It's so they also said the same thing about Renee Good, which again, to me, it looked like, as I said from the beginning, she was trying to pull away from those officers. She didn't try and hit an officer. She actually turned her wheel to the right, exactly as you would do if you were trying to get away from them. But okay, I understand people saw that differently. But then they went and called her a domestic terrorist, made the same claims about her that she showed up there that day to try and do as much harm as possible to as many federal agents as she could. Called her a domestic terrorist as well. Obviously, an absolute lie. That's not who she was. That's not what she was there for. Here is, I want to show you a little bit about Alex Pretty, the victim, because, as I said, he was a 37-year-old ICU nurse. He had no criminal record. So he lived in his community his whole life, doing an extremely noble job, being an ICU nurse for veterans. I actually had occasion to talk a couple weeks ago when I saw a video of a nurse about how, for me, nurses, like my niece recently decided that she was going to nursing school a couple years ago and now has graduated. And like almost nothing can make me prouder than the fact that she did that. Like, it's such a noble profession. It combines like extreme hard work with highly specialized knowledge and skill, combined with like off the chart levels of compassion and empathy, and the ability to endure some of the most horrific human moments when people are dying or they're in danger of dying. You have to deal with them. You have to deal with their family members. And anybody who I know who has gone through prolonged hospitalization of one of their loved ones, as our family did, walks away blown away by nurses. Now, obviously, not all nurses are wonderful people. I'm sure a lot of them are not good people. They don't take their job seriously. They're rude, whatever, incompetent. Obviously, that's true in every group. But I'm just saying, in general, being a nurse, being an ICU nurse, in order to go do that, I think you have to have some pretty noble impulses. And in order to do the job well, by all accounts, he did. You have to have a lot of skill on multiple levels, and especially a lot of compassion and empathy. And you could see that's why he went in. His first instinct was to help the woman who the ICE agent had pushed quite aggressively onto the snow. Not saying he was an angel. I'm not saying that this means automatically that the shooting was unjustified, but I do think it's important to know that if you're hearing government claims like he showed up there that day to try and massacre as many federal agents as he could, even though the video shows nothing of the kind, in fact, it shows the opposite, you should at least know who he is. So here is a son of a man who was a veteran who Alex Pretty took care of while his father was dying in the ICU. And again, having had that experience, I know how important it is to have these incredible nurses there. Like, the doctors come in, you don't really care what their demeanor is. You just want them to analyze and be scientific, and they can be assholes. You don't care. You just want them to be good. But nurses are really there to take care of the patient on all levels, including emotionally, which is extremely difficult when somebody's very sick and dying. And here's a testament to someone whose father was in the care of Alex Pretty. His name is Mac Randolph. R.I.P. Alex Pretty. He was my dad's ICU nurse. He read my dad's final salute at the VA after he passed away. Never wanted to share this video, but his speech is very on point. Also, my father's final words to me was continue to fight the good fight. He would be honored in Alex's sacrifices and ashamed of this current administration. In my dad's words, I encourage you all to continue to, quote, fight the good fight. Now, clearly he seems to be someone who's politically opposed to the administration, but here's the video of Alex Preddy reading his father's final words at the VA hospital where his father was because he was a veteran.
You guys go ahead and stand right over there. Terrence Lee Randolph, March 30th, 1947, December 10th, 2024. Today we remember that freedom is not free. We have to nurture it, protect it, and even sacrifice for it. May we never forget and always remember our brothers and sisters who have served so that we may enjoy the gift of freedom. So in this moment, we remember and give thanks for their dedication and selfless service to our nation in the cause of our freedom. In this solemn hour, we render them our honor and our gratitude. You guys can follow.
Now, again, this was posted by the son of that veteran, not by Alex Preddy's family. And I don't show you that to say that this proves he did nothing wrong. People are complex. People contain multitudes. But does that seem like a domestic terrorist to you? Somebody who showed up to just massacre as many ICE agents as he possibly could. And yet that was the reaction from our government officials. I showed you Christian Nome and Greg Bovino. Here is Stephen Miller, who posted this, quote, and this was in response to the Democrats' official account. ICE agent shot and killed another person in Minnesota this morning. Get ICE out of Minnesota. And Stephen Miller said, quote, a would-be assassin tried to murder federal law enforcement, and the official Democrat sides with the terrorists. And then you see he got a community note on X. Videos of the encounter show that the gun was never drawn. The weapon remains in the victim's holster until one agent removes it. After the victim is disarmed, a second agent shoots him repeatedly. And by the way, that means that the person, this American citizen, who had bullets pumped into him by ICE agents was unarmed at the time that happened because the gun had been removed. But to call him a terrorist, to me, this is like the Israelization by Stephen Miller of the United States. Anyone who the Israelis kill, any hospital they blow up becomes Hamas. Anyone they kill is just automatically a terrorist. He's a terrorist. And here you have Stephen Miller just outright lying and saying that this is a would-be assassin when every video, again, regardless of what your view is on the justifiability of the use of this force, shows that is an absolute lie. Here's Stephen Miller again, this time being retweeted by J.D. Vance, the vice president, in response to Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut, calling on ICE to leave Minneapolis. Stephen Miller, boosted by J.D. Vance, says an assassin tried to murder federal agents, and this is your response. We shouldn't accept lying from government officials, even if you love the government officials in question, even if it's your party in power, even if you support what they did. Because one of the reasons is that if you're confident that the video and the actual events shows that the use of force was justifiable, you don't need to lie. You wouldn't make up versions of events that were untrue. You wouldn't fabricate things that happened to support your case. And that's what government officials and their supporters were doing on social media all day long, just outright lying. Here is somebody named Zeke Akram, and this went mega viral. There you see 7,000 retweets, 42,000 likes. He claims to be a law enforcement officer, and this is what he said, quote, as a law enforcement officer, I've got a secret to tell you about us. This will be shocking information, so make sure you read this carefully. We hate it when people point guns at us, like a lot. We also love going home. Therefore, if you point your gun at us and cause us to potentially miss going home, it's going to piss us off and cause us to point our guns at you. Then it all just gets messy. obviously the problem with this is that Alex Preddy didn't point a gun at anybody. There's no doubt about that. And this went viral all over X as the reason why ICE was justified. If Alex Preddy had taken out his gun and pointed it at ICE agents and was shot as a result or thereafter, nobody would be having this discussion. It's precisely because he never did that. He never touched his gun. He never took out his gun. He never brandished his gun. He was disarmed of his gun before being shot. That's why people are so angry. But why lie like that? Why? All the videos show that. There's no video that ever showed that he pointed his gun at any federal agent. So if you have to defend what ICE did by lying and saying he took his gun out and pointed it at law enforcement officials or agents, that's a pretty good indication that you don't think the actual events allow you to justify what was done. Then, because there were so many people pointing out that he was lying, including me, he went back and said this, quote, "After rewatching the video, I'll take back my statement about pointing a gun at the officers." Yeah, that was like pretty foundational to the whole justification. I don't know what was going on when they dogpiled him, but he didn't appear to have his firearm on him at the time of the shooting. Right, he didn't appear to have his firearm at the time of the shooting, which is another way of saying he was an unarmed civilian who the police killed or who the ICE agents killed. But then, of course, he goes on to justify all of this anyway, even though the central argument that he made, don't aim a gun at us, because if you do, you're likely to get shot because we like to go home, turned out to be false. And instead of admitting that, okay, his analysis has now changed, his analysis didn't change at all. Same with this Curtis Yarvin, who a bunch of people on whatever, the dissident right or the alt-right, whatever you want to call them, think is some kind of like intellectual. I know so many Silicon Valley billionaires who think Curtis Yarvin is some kind of like prophet. Curtis Yarvin is an idiot. And here's what he said. She drove her car at a cop, meaning Renee Good. He pulled the gun on the cops. Watch the way the lib, without denying these fundamental facts, sinuously works around them. So in order to justify this, he said, quote, he pulled the gun on the cops. That did not happen. And then he says, watch the lib deny all these, quote, fundamental facts. And then when a bunch of people, including myself, pointed out that, again, this was a lie, and why do you have to lie if what happened was justified? This is what he went back and said. Update. It looks like he had a visible gun and was fighting with the cops, but one of the cops pulled it from either his hand or his waist. The idea that you have any right to safety when you do this is comical. Now, again, the whole case he made was predicated on a lie, that this was justified because he pointed the gun at cops. And then when he finds out, oh, actually, that none of that happened, that's actually a lie. He says, yeah, well, anyway, I still think what was done here was, you know, if you're someone on the right and you just want federal agents to go and kill left-wing protesters, then just say that. Just say that. You know, I was pretty surprised I saw Nick Fuentes justifying this, and I'm going to do a separate analysis of this, but, you know, one of the reasons why it was so central to right-wing politics to oppose the deployment of federal agents on American streets in American law enforcement instead of local and state police was because they didn't trust federal agents to carry out these duties. They thought these were distant Washington bureaucrats who were going to come and take away their rights and kill them. It grew out of things like Waco, but also the FBI shooting of Randy Weaver and his wife and kid and dog. And this is when right-wing politics began to say, we don't want these federal agents. We shouldn't have armed federal agents on the street. How do you think the Graper movement is going to fare if the federal government is deploying armed federal agents on the street against anybody whose ideology they feel like is threatening? There will be another Democrat in office at some point. And even if there isn't, federal law enforcement does not like right-wing extremists as they see them. Some of them do. Some of them are that, but many of them don't. ICE was created in 2003 as part of the Department of Homeland Security. It all grew out of 9/11. There was so much debate at the time. Many people who are conservatives saying we don't need this additional bureaucracy, this another layer of armed federal agencies. And now it's become, just 20 years later, the avatar of what the right cheers, even as they go and do violence, not against people in the country illegally, but against American citizens who, yes, are protesting them, which is their absolute right, whether through their First Amendment right of assembly and speech, or their Second Amendment right of carrying firearms, as the Supreme Court has interpreted that Second Amendment. So yes, they are going, American citizens, exercising the right to protest the presence of ICE in their street, which we're not supposed to have. But again, leave all those debates to the side and focus on the fact that U.S. government officials are lying. And do you have a peasant mentality that says, I'm happy if government officials lie to the public and to me? And ask yourself why they feel a need to lie this way if what happened here is so justifiable.